Our next panel will focus on global investment in the post-pandemic era, which I hope we can say we are in. Please help me welcome once again my colleague Abhishek Sengupta, Head of Multimedia at Khaleej Times. He will moderate this session. I'll also note that there is coffee and snacks coming up, so just bear with us. He will be joined by esteemed panelists, His Excellency Fahad Al Gergawi, CEO of Dubai Investment Development Agency, Les Mail, CEO of Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange, Vera Futorjanski, CEO and founder of Veritas Ventures, and Daniel Seal, founder and CEO of Unbound. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Michal. You said the most important thing. The coffee break is coming up, but we'll try and make the next 20 minutes very, very exciting, because what we're going to talk about is essentially the new norm. And of course, before I get started, I'd like to quickly introduce, in fact, reintroduce our distinguished panelists. Right next to me is His Excellency Fahad Al Gergawi, who's not just the CEO of Dubai Investment Development Agency, but also the President of WIPA, World Association of Investment Promotions Agencies. Thank you for joining us today. Les Malle, the CEO of Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange. Thank you very much for joining us. Vera Futorjanski. I'm sorry, that's a bit of a tongue twister, but I'll get used to this by the end of this session. Vera, thank you for making your time today. You're the CEO and founder of Veritas Ventures. And of course, last but never least, Daniel Seal, with whom I've had the longest conversation this morning before we got onto the stage. He's the founder and CEO of Unbound, a company that of course has offices in Singapore, London, and very much here in the UAE, the capital of UAE, in Abu Dhabi. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let us get started with the very first question. We are talking about ideally, we would all love to be in a world that is post-pandemic, but we're still very much in the middle of a pandemic. If you look at some of the numbers in the US, India, Brazil, we're still reeling with cases every day. Of course, UAE is a world apart. Question to Your Excellency, Mr. Fahad Al Gergawi. Is this the new norm? And how has this changed your mindset when it comes to investing?
Good morning.
And are you used to it already?
Good morning, everyone. My pleasure to be with you here, and among also the distinguished panelists. The new norm we're still discovering. I think no one can call it until we see not only the COVID end, but also the shaping of human interaction and communication just after COVID and how they will. We all believe that we will go all the way with, virtual communication will be the solution of everything. But we understand that, at least in our world of investment, that trust is very important for investors to take decisions. And trust is not only virtual. Trust is about where I'm going and whom I'm dealing with, and I have to really get that feeling. Especially it's a long-term process. So we will have to do that. And actually, even the ones who didn't dream about it, that we still need to really meet each other, see each other. We're human at the end of the day.
Agreed.
We need to interact, we need to discuss, we need to have the feeling of that one-to-one person to really establish a good understanding of where our decision going to take us. In our world and the investment scene, yes, it is very important. We are still discovering. We're getting a lot of information, although certain information sometimes gets us confused, but we're still in the middle of it.
We're still getting to know that better. Let's bring in Les Malle, the CEO of Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange. Les, how has the last 12 months, 18 months been? How has it changed your outlook as an investor, as someone who does business essentially out of Dubai for the rest of the world?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, and wonderful to be here this morning. Actually, I have a slightly different opinion about the new normal or investment out of the pandemic. I don't think the what of investments has necessarily changed. I think they're still based on the fundamentals and the analysis that's done. I think perhaps that the how and the why are interesting, particularly on the retail nature, which will need some protection, the Robin Hood trader, the micro investing, if you like, and the big investment projects will have to have an attraction that leads to the fragmentation in order to encourage those micro investors. But we talk about the new normal, and I know we're still in the pandemic. Here we are, and not quite on the stage, but wearing face masks. But when I look at the global equity markets, they recovered surprisingly quickly. Within 2 to 3 months, Nasdaq, DAX, Nifty were back at the levels that they were in Q1, Q2 last year. And that hasn't been eroded. So if a pandemic like COVID can't take down the global equity markets, has it really fundamentally changed the investment strategies and outlook? And as I say, I think the switch in that time, over the 12, 18 months, still a very short time, is actually the retail investor. And that's, I think, where the challenge is going to be, because they will need protection as well as the global corporates attracting that asset class of investor.
It's interesting that you mentioned how markets have recovered, or if not, they're already on that recovery mode.
Yep.
In fact, just 3 days ago, we had the OECD global growth outlook, 5.8% for this year, vis-a-vis 4.2 as projected 6 months ago in December. Let's bring in Daniel at this point in time. Daniel, of course, we are talking about how you've been taking 100 flights a year just before pandemic hit us, and now you're down to 20 Zoom calls a day. Of course, personally and business-wise, we've had to sort of make do with a lot of new changes. What, in your words, what are the big new trends that have sparked this growth that Les has just mentioned, in your opinion?
So I think if you go back and look over the past 20 years, there's been always moments of pivots. You know, we see when Morris mentioned before with Yossi Vardi with ICQ, when messaging became instant. We've seen when films went that way. So we've seen those changes happen. And I think what COVID has done, let's just take the classic example. Events, we used to have hundreds. One of the fastest growth companies in Europe was something called Hopin. We would never have done before an online event. It's now, I think, a $3 billion valued company. Airlines have been hit, hotels, but you know, we've been quite sheltered here in the UK. A great story was an entrepreneur I met in England who had an app basically booking hair appointments. Now, for 6 months of the year, that business collapsed, but what he started doing was importing shavers, razors, and he's built a phenomenal business. So I think pandemics promote opportunities. Every crisis is an opportunity. And if you ask me, what we're seeing, if you're looking, is how people are wanting to try new technologies. We heard before about crypto, about cyber. Crypto's gone crazy, up, down, and not here, speculating. So I think what we're seeing is an acceleration of what's happening. So fintech, mobile banking, digital banking. Look here, we're seeing now the first challenger bank opening. I was chatting before with someone in the audience, the insurance sector, looking at people, the uninsured, the unbanked. So this is an opportunity for the necessity, as Morris said earlier, happening. So can we connect to people in banking? Can we open our market? So my advice to people, and certainly the advice to myself and my business, is look to see where the challenge is and look to see whether the technology that solves that's where you can start speculating and seeing.
Surely, you did mention fintech. In fact, last week I was moderating a panel. We were talking about telemedicine and how this pandemic has thrown up opportunities everywhere. Let's bring in Vera for the first time this morning. Vera, your thoughts on how this whole last 18 months, 12 months have changed your outlook as an investor here?
Thank you so much. First of all, thanks so much for having me, Abhishek. I find it's amazing that we have this event happening, so it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, of course, the last 12, 18 months changed everything, right? The consumer behavior shifted to a whole different level. I'm sure many of us have to teach their parents, in my case, even my grandparents, how to use Zoom, how to use, WhatsApp video calls. So the consumer behavior has changed immensely. The marketplaces have taken off. We do everything online now, right? Mental health, well-being in general has really taken off as well. Fintech, as some of my fellow panelists have mentioned, NFTs, the whole crypto space is very big. So there has been a huge shift in behavior. What I think also happened, what I think is a silver lining of COVID, is that we don't necessarily have to be in Silicon Valley anymore to actually raise money, either as a VC or as a startup. And I think that's actually something positive. As we all know, for the first time, Sequoia made an investment in the Middle East, in an Egyptian startup, which was just a couple of months old, which is impressive. If you have spoken to them 18 months ago, they probably wouldn't even know where Egypt is, right? So this behavior shift, that you can actually now raise money as an Egyptian startup from Sequoia, which is, one of the best VCs in the world, I find that's great, that we see those shifts happening. And this is going to be more and more. I see several things happening for our region. I think, first of all, global VCs are looking at us now, finally. It's really time. I remember when I used to be with Dubai government and we would travel to the US and talk to the local VCs there. They would laugh in our face. They're like, why would we should even look at the region? But now they are looking because they realize the potential. It's growing immensely. There is demand. You mentioned telehealth. We don't have enough doctors in the region here. I think on average it's 1.4, whereas in Europe it's about 4 doctors per 1,000 people. So telehealth is really necessary, and it has taken off a lot, which is great to see. Also, what I think is happening, thanks to recent exits like Uber buying Careem, we have this ripple effect of the people who used to be with Careem now building their own startups and going to India, to Australia, to Europe. So this ripple effect is very impressive as well to see what's happening in the region. More people are wanting to become entrepreneurs. They are raising money. They are creating an environment. And another thing that I find impressive, and many people from outside are surprised, is the role the government actually plays here, and even more now. I think the UAE government knew already before you want to diversify from the oil economy and actually really bet on innovation, and it's happening even more now. So I think going forward, we'll really see local champions created by the governments in our region.
It's interesting you mentioned government policies and framework. We'll talk about that. We'll come to that a bit later. I want to come back to Your Excellency Fahad Al-Gergawi. You're also the president of WIPA, and we were talking about it. Les did mention how the world is projected to grow at over 5%. Any trend that comes to your mind you think will be the game changer this year?
I think the whole digital transformation that we've seen and the behavior on consumer is changing everything for investors to look at. Definitely opportunity has been created out of times like that in many different cycles, and this was also one part of what Dubai have been changing itself in many different ups and downs. Nevertheless, where we are today in terms of investment, and investors around the world have decreased tremendously. We're almost 50% down from 2019 as per the UNCTAD numbers. But at the same time, there are signs of change happening from governments. What we are here, there is on WIPA level at least, IPAs are a backbone that support government to attract foreign direct investment. And in a time like that where the world have lost a lot of jobs, which is a trigger for some domestic turbulence and insecurity in certain places, governments need to work hand in hand with their IPAs to really shift into two. One is the support that they need to give to these IPAs to really attract the future investment and to work within the private sectors and global and international players around the world to attract more investment. And this is going to be a fierce competition due to the numbers going less, and then the companies or countries seeking investment is increasing. At the same time, government policies that need to be changed within the facilitation of the new investment. As we spoke here, the rules, regulations, and even central banks need to play a big role in that, and to adaptation of new technologies that are already there, and consumers are already embarking on it. Even if I'm living in a country that has still restrictions, I'm doing that globally, sitting in my own place. So all these adaptation should happen from two parts. One, the government itself. Number two, I think the IPAs or the promotion and attraction agencies of the world. It has to be within also a good understanding where this after COVID bringing us. And I think we are blessed with the governments here that they took bold changes and a lot of laws and regulations. Changing the company law is a tremendous change that we saw this year with a few other laws that came into mind. This is all preparation for the next wave, and I think it's not the end of it, it's the start of few others. And that created the buzz that we're seeing in the market, that created confidence that we're seeing even in the local investors to really start embarking on what's next, what can I do, and going back to their development plans for the after COVID time.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you touched upon how government should step in. Obviously here in the UAE, the government has in a very, very large way. This also kind of triggers the resetting, if you like. I don't like that word too often these days, but if you were to reset your ESG goals, it's already happening. Do you think investment will have to, you mentioned IPA, investments in the future will have to keep that kind of sustainability in mind going forward?
100%, 100%. We only have to look at the next generation of investors to see the tools that they use and the mindset that they have. ESG, you know, we've been in our respective careers, however long we have, we probably couldn't even spell ESG 10 years ago.
And it's become a vogue now.
100%. So the generation coming through won't just be looking for this, they'll be demanding this. And this comes back to what I mentioned earlier about the retail investor and how we fragment investment strategies to appeal to the ESG population coming through.
Daniel, your thoughts on that?
So, I was on a panel with Sir Ronald Cohen about 5 years ago, one of the pioneers of responsible investing, and I remember he said, in a few years' time, ESG is going to be, and I said, do we really think it's going to be that big? Fast forward, on one of my last flights, I remembered Standard Charter, a great advert they had saying, it showed a shipyard, we will only invest if we know the conditions are good. So a group of us got together during the beginning of the pandemic because we kind of thought, well, we're not traveling around. So we built a startup in ESG called Equilibrium, which was all about metrics and measuring sustainability. And within 7 months, we managed to raise a Series A at $35 million from literally 2 customers because the industry now of the role of government in investing, the role of corporates, it has to be more than that. In a sector which I've just discovered through seeing opportunity and around, but it's really something meaningful because it means that whenever companies have that obligation, like we heard from Vera, Sequoia going into Egypt, but now the wide implications of that, the job creation, providing health insurance for the people, providing with other things. So investors have to look at just only the monetary side, and as we're moving in a industry and in a world of more socially focused, ESG is a great opportunity. And I think here, just echoing what His Excellency says, where you have a country and a government who invest alongside corporates and ensuring that there is responsibility from government and responsibility from corporates. This region is fantastic because of government's role in innovation, partnering with industry and ensuring everyone is the highest standards. But certainly I think we're going to be seeing ESG, companies will be starting to publish ESG audits, and it's an industry that's going to go flying.
Absolutely. Vera, you run an advisory company here, and obviously you're planning bigger things in the next few months to come. How much of ESG is on your mind?
I mean, as we discussed before, yes, I run an advisory firm and I'm building a well-being VC fund. So for me, of course, ESG's impact investing are very important. But I think we have to be also honest and realistic. We talk about it a lot, but not that much has happened yet. So I really would love to see more change in that respect. I think we really have to go from talking to doing soon. And of course, it's, the big corporates have to make a big step in that. And it's great to hear that, some big ones like BlackRock are actually talking about it now and making it part of their plans. So for me going forward, I want to look into several verticals, well-being, being one of them, mental health, meditation, but also food technology. I think we have to become so much more self-sufficient here, and that's why I'm also bullish on this joint partnership now on the Abraham Accords of Israel and UAE, because I think we'll see a lot of benefit coming from Israel this way in the agriculture sector and food technology. I know all they have hydroponic farms. We're thinking about greening the desert, different superfoods. So there are things happening already. Back when I was part of Dubai Future Accelerators, we brought companies then already that were working in that respect. But I think we need to do much more. And I think an important point in that is to educate people. So we need to educate consumers, but we also need to educate investors. And in this region particularly, we need to educate family offices. The younger generation of family offices, they are going into investing, and they're really, really interested in impact investing as well. So it's the education that comes first and then has the ripple effect on everything else.
There is a point I would like to add, and this is where we're adopting at YPAN, starting at Dubai FDI. Impact FDI. Impact FDI is a trio of investment that has a positive impact on, of course, economy has to be profitable, but at the same time, social and environmental. This is something that will add a lot of value to whatever investment comes to different, destinations, cities, and regions or countries. And I think part of that is needed in a continent called Africa, where we saw in the past years certain investment that didn't meet any criteria, even to an extent of a big land of farming that brought even foreign country labor to harvest the crops, not even given the local society. So many things can be adopted in different places, but as long as Impact FDI is part of what you're doing, it takes the mark with everything that we would like to do. And I agree that a lot of education needs to be done in many different places, not only the global initiative that is by United Nations. Within that, we need to take it all the way to even the academia.
We're actually running out of time. We'll have one last question. I want all of you, your views on that. We'll start with you since we were with you last time. Any government framework that you want introduced that you think has just been introduced and doing well? Because you did mention that governments must be involved in a big way in the post-pandemic recovery.
I think, in my opinion, it's going to be talent. And I think we've done already that 1 month ago into facilitation, the attraction of talent, the keeping talent, at the same time growing talent. Dubai is blessed, and UAE in general, of being able to grow talent, attract talent, and continue to be a place where I think majority of the, at least Arab world youth would like to live in.
Absolutely, and that's something that's been talked about all the time. Les, your final words on that. Any government framework that you want to see? He didn't mention about attracting talent. Dubai has already been doing that. Anything that you want to add to that?
And Dubai is such a hub for the Middle East that we know. And the one answer I would give to your question is crypto. There was an event last week here in Dubai, a crypto and blockchain summit. There was 5,000 people attending. And my business, my company, we trade $2 billion a day, notional value. That's typically currency, Forex. We'll be adding shekels soon. This time last year, no one was queuing at my door wanting crypto. Now they are. And I need the central bank and the regulatory framework to be in place. It's almost there in terms of the environment that we need. But for a regulated exchange platform, I still need central bank approval. So that one simple question and simple answer is what we would do.
No, there are reports we've read, we've actually carried on college times. Talks are very much on.
Yeah.
You never know, in the next 6 months it
Inshallah.
should be regulated. Daniel, final words on any government policy framework that you...
Well, as a proud resident of Abu Dhabi, I'm going to wave that flag that there is some wonderful initiatives happening in Abu Dhabi, whether it's Hub 71, Abu Dhabi Global Market, an international finance center, and many of the initiatives of funding. I think what Abu Dhabi is doing to attract, I think they want to say 1,000 startups in the next 2 years or so is really quite interesting. And I think, you know, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, the UAE is a wonderful place of access to Asia, access to Africa, and also access to a region of, if you combine a whole MENA of nearly 150 million people, you know, almost the size of half of Europe, equally the size there. So there's a lot of opportunity in this region.
Absolutely. You've summed it up the best possible way. Vera, last take from you before we call it a day, at least this panel.
Coffee time.
I think there are so many wonderful initiatives, but one that I'm really excited about is to bring all government transactions on blockchain, to make it a totally paperless government. I just moderated a panel for the Forbes Middle East, competition, but there was somebody
that out.
there was somebody from Smart Dubai on it who reconfirmed that they have those plans and they plan to make it happen by December 2021. So in the next 6 months, we're going from, away from all the papers to being a completely paperless government, which I think is unprecedented, is amazing. To have all government transactions on blockchain is the way to go for many governments in the world. So.
Absolutely. Paperless is the word, and we're seeing it already. And I think that is a very fair point. A lot of us have heard this. Thank you very much for your time
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Vera and gentlemen, we'll see you in a short while from now.
Thank you.